Hi there, guys. So today we have news that Liz Kendall is planning to soften the impact of her planned disability benefits cut. So if you'll remember, this is the news that Labour are going to be changing the eligibility for PIP claims. So let's see what's happening here then. Kendall is trying to soften the impact of planned benefit cuts worth $5 billion a year by 2030. The Welfare Reform Bill will include proposals to make it harder for disabled people with less severe conditions to claim personal independence payment. And here we go. The BBC has been told anybody who loses PIP will receive the payment for a transitional period of 13 weeks, rather than the usual 4 weeks before it is removed. So they're not talking about scrapping the cuts to PIP. They're just talking about softening and allowing a 13-week transition rather than the current 4-week transition. So not a significant change. It's just softening the impact of the cuts marginally rather than actually removing the cuts. So let's see what Labour's MPs are saying. Dozens of Labour MPs have expressed concerns about the plans to cut PIP payments and the sickness-related element of universal credit. Many have said they're prepared to vote against the primary legislation. All right, well, let's see about that. The welfare package as a whole could push an extra 250,000 people, including 50,000 children, into relative poverty, according to the government's impact assessment. Neil Duncan Jordan is one of the 42 Labour MPs who wrote a letter that said the welfare reforms were impossible to support if changes were not made. Duncan Jordan said, "Poverty delayed is still poverty." Yes, that's right, Neil. Ian Byrne added, "After 14 weeks, do the disabled and sick affected miraculously end the need for the vital assistance being taken away?" An absolute nonsense. Yeah, I fully agree with Ian. So what does it tell us about what's going on in this country then? So firstly, I think the thing to note is that we're becoming sicker as a nation. If you just simply remove people from the statistics or change the eligibility criteria for certain benefits, that doesn't remove the need. It doesn't stop people from being sick or unwell. You know, as the government's own impact assessment says, all this is going to do is push already vulnerable people into poverty. The real short-sightedness of this policy, though, of these benefit cuts, is just going to lead to more severe problems down the road. So, you know, the short-term gain that they might get, which I don't agree with anyway, it's just simply going to put strain on the NHS and potentially social care, you know, in years to come. So it seems nonsensical, really. It reminds me a little bit of when the coalition government changed the child poverty statistics so that hundreds of thousands of children suddenly weren't in poverty. So it seems like this is just another strand of continuity Osborneism, really. More broadly, though, I've not heard anything meaningful from the government about why people in this country are becoming sicker, and I think that's the real giveaway here. You know, I've heard very little from the government about regional inequality, about difficulty for people accessing health support at an early stage, and then also, more importantly, I've heard nothing from them about, you know, the way we live our lives and our economic system. So my question is, why is that? You know, why are we not hearing that stuff from the government, and why are we not talking about the long-term challenges that we face in this country? You know, is it because it's too cerebral and it doesn't play well in focus groups, or could it be that our government and the people in the cabinet, they just don't have any underlying analysis of what's wrong with our society? I mean, I know what my view is, but I'll leave you to decide that one. Riddle me this: if you're a single parent with 2 children, for example, when are you going to get the chance to do some exercise? You know, if you need 2 incomes to service a mortgage and then suddenly one of you becomes long-term sick, but you're not eligible for PIP under these new rules, then what happens to you? You know, who's picking up the tab when those people are at risk of homelessness? Again, all this is going to do is just push more people through the cracks in our society. It's going to create more problems in the long term. Again, it's just another example of the need for short-term political gain, although I'd even question that logic, you know, trumping long-term planning. So the whole policy just seems like a nonsense to me. Anyway, thanks guys. See you next time.